Am I in the middle? I'm kind of in the middle. All right. Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I do on Sundays. I'm actually shooting this video way early in the week. I have a ton of things going on and we're expecting more winter weather. I put one of these up on Sunday, shot it up here on the porch, and had sleet falling behind me. It rained in the afternoon, erased most of that, didn't have any damage in the landscape. So thankful for that. Temperatures moderated during the week. I got short sleeves on here. One day this week, the rest of the week has been quite cold, and it's going to be cold again tomorrow. But with more snow and ice coming up here for the weekend, I'm actually going to go ahead and fertilize everything in this landscape. Tomorrow, you'll see that video at some point pretty soon. It's a little earlier than I normally do it, but I have the opportunity here, and organic fertilizer won't kick in while the soil's this cold anyway. So it'll just be there when everything starts to warm back up. But you'll see that video soon enough. Got good questions on this video from Sunday. In fact, a lot of questions, and so I definitely won't get to all of them. Don't know when the next one of these will be. It'll be maybe the next Sunday. More likely it'll be this next one will have a gap in between it. I thought this one would have a gap in it, but I've got a little bit of time today. But I think there will be a gap. You can ask questions down below. If I don't get very many questions, I'll go back to that old video. But typically, I get more questions in one of these than I can answer. Which is a good thing. So thank you guys for participating. Let's get started with questions from this past Sunday. Somebody has some diseased Indian hawthorns. Indian hawthorns get terrible leaf spot problems. A lot of the old varieties do. There were a few that have been resistant in the past, and there are actually some new ones that are coming that are going to be absolutely resistant. I have one in the front garden space that I'll be sharing with you guys. I've shown it in a couple tour videos, and I've talked about it, but I haven't spent too much time on it just because it hasn't been available. It's literally a very, very new plant with growers just starting to grow it, but it's that variety is called Snowbank. It is just clean as it can be. Anyway, this person has some disease, Indian hawthorns, wanted to know if it was worth saving them. No. I can tell you it'll get worse each year until you eventually pull them out. A variety that's been around for a long time, it's actually pretty resistant to it, is Eleanor Tabor. It'll get it some, but it's the most resistant of the older varieties. Got a little curl in the leaf. I had them on the foundation back at the old house. If you went back and looked at a tour video from the old house, they're great plants. They were on my foundation for 20 some years. But most of the other older varieties that have been in the trade for a long time, they're just a disaster at this point. Somebody asked me if it was okay to plant encore azaleas now. This question doesn't have anything to do with encore azaleas really, because I get there's tons of questions about, can I plant now? So let's just have the question, can I plant now? Yeah, anything that's acclimated to the outdoors, you can go ahead and put in the ground. So if it's, I've got a driveway full of plants out there that I'm either shooting videos for, or they're going in the landscape, they're for projects, whatever, they've been outside. The ones that have been outside, they can absolutely go in the ground and they'd be better off in the ground. If you got a plant in full bloom from someplace out of a greenhouse, I wouldn't plant it. And probably a few other things. I don't like to plant dormant grasses really in the peak of winter while we're getting these snow events and the ground is really wet. If I had grasses in a container, I'd probably wait for them to start waking up, and then I'd plant them. Somebody asked, just in general, where I buy seeds. I did a video on my seeds for this spring a few weeks back, if you want to go back and look at that video. But I use Baker Creek heirloom seeds. I use Johnny's, and then Home Depot, my local garden center up the road, sells some Baker Creek things. So I'm equal opportunity seed purchaser. There's wherever I can get the thing, get my hands on the thing that I want, and then I look at reviews. If it's a new company I haven't dealt with, I do look at reviews, but I get seeds from all over the place. Probably primarily Baker Creek and Johnny's is my main two. Johnny's is a little, you can't get one pack of seeds from Johnny's. It's the most uneconomical thing in the world, and I hate to hit them with this because their seeds are great, but it's like $7 to ship a pack of seeds, which makes no sense. It feels like it could go in an envelope for 50 cents. But anyway, when you order from Johnny's, you want to order a goodly amount. You want to because the freight's the same whether you order 1 pack or 10. So that's the only annoying thing with them. If it's just like 1 pack, you're better off getting it from somebody else. Okay, somebody asked me, they want the most dense evergreen shrubs for a sound barrier. First of all, plants don't work very well as sound barriers. They will if you had like rows and rows and rows of them. They're somewhat effective. But if you see the DOT on the interstate, they're not putting up rows of Leyland cypress or green giant arborvitaes or hollies or shindo viburnums. They're putting up solid walls. And the reason for that is sound hits solid objects and bounce back. The sound waves will pass through plants pretty regularly. So I would not expect a lot of sound reduction from planting plants, unless you've got just 100 feet to just to pile them up. I don't think you're going to get sound reduction. So with that said, things like shindo viburnums and hollies like Nellie Stevens hollies or Oakland hollies tend to be thick all the way down to the bottom, whereas some of those giant conifers like green giants or Leylands get very thin at the bottom. And I wouldn't use them. Leylands are a train wreck, and I fully expect in the next 10 to 15, 20 years to hear green giants are a train wreck too. But if people buy 45, 50, 60 of them and put them in a solid line all over the place, trust me, something's coming that's going to be problematic for green giants. It's just the writing's already on the wall. They're being grossly overplanted, grossly overused, and not even a good screening plant, honestly, except when they're young. Okay, somebody asked me for shade screening plants in zone 7 that will also flower. We're looking at rhododendrons. Yeah, rhododendrons will definitely be on that list. Carolina cherry laurels, probably super underused. I did a video down in Fairhope, Alabama, I called it Tropical Paradise or something like that. That tour video I did, that lady had a row of Carolina cherry laurels that were just beautiful. Great screening plants, deep shade area in her tropical backyard, which like everything was kind of shady. Great plant, again underused. If you don't need a lot of height, you can use something like West Coast laurels or skip laurels, but Carolina cherry laurels if you need them taller. Camellias, definitely in zone 7 are going to be good screening plants. Slow to get there, but great dense screening plants. Alyssium tends to grow a little thin overall, but it can certainly be part of a dense planting screen. Larger growing Mahonia for sure would work well for this. I've covered lots of Mahonia. On the other channel, I put up a Marvel Mahonia video as a single plant video on that channel if you want to go look at that. And then mountain laurels are probably a pretty good choice. It depends. If I'm like 7B near 8, maybe not, but certainly 7A. Somebody asked me, they want to grow Italian cypress in Blowing Rock, Kentucky. Yep, Italian cypress are really zone 8 to 10, and so I don't think up there, I think that's probably zone 6B-ish, something like that, maybe even 6A. So I don't think you're going to be able to grow Italian cypress up there. Yours just because they're cold. Here in the southeast, there are a few exceptions. There are some pretty Italian cypress here in Raleigh, in the more urban areas where it's really kind of zone 8. There are some exceptions. In the southeast, I'll see the occasional Italian cypress that look fantastic, but they kind of struggle with our humidity a bit as well, and tend to do better in the west. Again, with some exceptions. I actually passed a beautiful one today on Hillsborough Street over by St. Mary's College. It must be 20 feet tall, and it's just perfect top to bottom, which is kind of unusual here. But so it stands out as a nice specimen. For you can grow Spartan junipers, you could grow skyrocket junipers, you could grow Taylor's junipers. There's a lot of upright, narrow conifers that you can grow in zone 6. So just probably not Italian cypress. Somebody asked me, they got figs near their septic field, wanted to know if that was a problem. Probably. Figs are super aggressive rooting. I cut one down back here in this corner. I have replanted 2 fig trees in this landscape, but there was one back over here beside me that was just in a bad spot. I don't even know what variety it was or whatever, but since I've cut that thing down, suckers have popped up all over the place, and I can dig over here and find roots they're aggressive rooting. So I probably would not be a good call near your septic field. It may never cause a problem, but just on the safe side, figs are aggressive rooting plants. Somebody planted, here's another Leyland green giant thing. They have a mixture of Leylands and green giants and want to know how to tell them apart. Usually this time of year, especially in like January, those green giant arborvitae will get a bit of a rust, orangey rust color to them in the peak of the winter. So right now it'd probably be pretty easy to tell them apart. The Leylands will probably maintain more of a darker foliage throughout the winter time. And the green arborvitae in general have more of a fern-like look to the foliage. So if you take a look at it, it's just more detailed, it literally looks, it's kind of fern-like, honestly. And the Leylands not so much. The Leylands are, on the ends of the little of each blade, they're just little narrow, separated pieces. They're easy to identify if you looked at them forever. The Leylands will be darker green right now. The green giants will be kind of an amber color in all likelihood right now. Okay, somebody asked me their trees are still holding leaves well beyond when they normally would be, and will it be a problem? I don't think so. Now that everything's gotten to sleep, I think everything will be fine. Looks like we're going to have enough cold treatment on things. Boy, it was looking really iffy there for a long time whether we were ever going to have winter. And I still have some new growth on some things out here, and it's being stung now, which is a good thing. Honestly, I'm glad. I'm glad the stuff's getting knocked back and it's being put to an actual sleep. So no, I don't think it'll be a problem. So I mentioned I talked about mail order plants in this past Sunday's video, and I mentioned ordering from Plant Delights, which is actually near me, which they have lots of specialty perennials, maybe the most, and one of the most, it's worth a trip to go to Plant Delights one time on one of their open weekends just to see their garden. Their botanical garden is one of the most amazing, really kind of a private garden. I mean, they open it to the public on these open weekends, but really on a day-to-day basis, it's a private garden. One of the most beautiful private gardens in America, probably. Anyway, it's definitely worth seeing. Things you'll never see. And I've been doing this for 35 years, and I can walk through that place and I definitely see things that I like. What is that? So even for me, even for very experienced gardeners, very experienced horticulturalists, I guarantee you there's something in that garden that will stump you, almost certainly. It's a beautiful place. But so they have a lot of perennials, mail order perennials. Not the least expensive place ever, but they've built this beautiful garden, and they have a sustainable business because of it. So there's that. There's that. What was I going to say? Oh, they were asking most of the pots, the majority of the pots are like 3.5 inches. They wanted to know if I'd plant those things directly in the ground. In the springtime, I buy tons of things in 3.5-inch pots. I love to buy that size perennial. I love it. There's really no reason to buy a gallon or a 2-gallon perennial if you can get a 3.5-inch cup. So it's, for me, based on the time of the year, if I was to receive them now, depending on what it is, obviously. If it's marginal, you're definitely not putting it in the ground, except in the spring. But this time of year, I might put it into a slightly larger pot, hold it until whatever it is wakes up in the spring and plant it. But in the spring and early summer, those 3.5-inch plants, I'm popping them in the ground all day long, no problem. Just go for it. And you'll see 3.5-inch potted perennial on most things will be every bit as big as a gallon over the course of that first season, if it's happy. Oh, let's see. Espoma says you got to use more fertilizer if you put it on top of the mulch than under the mulch. I'm going to use Espoma fertilizer tomorrow, and I just throw out handfuls of it all over the place, like kind of willy-nilly. I don't actually, there's two things, and there's no possibility I'm pulling my mulch back to put that fertilizer under it, because I'm going to expose all kinds of weed seeds, and I'm going to have weeds everywhere. And I don't have many weeds in this landscape because I've kept the top sealed off, except for my vegetable garden, which you guys saw in a video yesterday. But that, I was out of town for weeks, and that's exposed soil over there. I need to mulch in between the rows, and I typically do, but I didn't have time this year. Anyway, that's a weedy mess. But for the rest of these beds, I don't have that issue, and that's because I keep the top sealed. There's no way I'd ever do that. And then they say use, basically twice as much if it's over the top of the mulch, and I just don't do that either. I think, again, I think we just consistently are told to over-fertilize things and over-love things in our gardens, and it's, for the most part, unnecessary. A lot of the feeding that you're doing is the mulching, and the mulch breaking down, compost that you've used, and then that little bit of fertilizer that I'm using as well. But, we over-fertilize. Okay, let's see. Somebody asked, the couch on the back porch that I was sitting on the other day, where I got it, I just got it at Lowe's last year. Got it near the end of the season. And it fits in that screen porch perfectly over there. It's a little too light a color, for something that's used in an outdoor setting like that. It looks dirty pretty quickly. That's the only problem with it. Let's see. Somebody, I break the leaves off the grass into the beds, let them break down in the beds. I don't let them pile up under individual plants. I don't let them get this deep under a single plant. So they're spread out pretty evenly. Somebody's got a sycamore, those leaves are gigantic. Wanted to know if, to do the same thing. You might run the sycamore leaves. I would probably run through my leaf shredder. I do have you can get an inexpensive leaf shredder on Amazon. And the sycamore leaves, I might run through that shredder and then leave them on the ground. But that would certainly speed up them breaking down. Okay. Somebody wants to grow, this was a question I got for 2 weeks, and I missed it last week. They want to grow plants they've got a road base, and they want to come up over that with compost and grow in it. So raised beds over a spot that's made of road base. If you can't get the road base up, then yes, you can grow in compost on top of it. The depth of the compost is going to be dependent on what you're growing. Like you wouldn't have to, you could probably grow annuals in, less than a foot of material. That could be annual flowers or annual vegetables, lettuces and broccoli and all those kinds of things. If you're going to grow perennials, things that come back year to year, edible things that come back year to year, let's say asparagus, rosemary, perennial edible things, or none, you're going to need more depth than that. So you probably are going to be, I think you probably need 18 inches or more if you're growing perennials, and you probably use a little less than that if you were growing annual things that are going to get torn out, and then you can just refresh it a little bit, each season. Yeah, I think you can get away with it. You need a good compost, and then the depth, again, I've been determined by what it is that you're growing. If you can get 18 inches or more, that'll probably grow most things in it. Okay. Perennials will eventually get tired in it, though. Keep that in mind. It's just like planting it in a container. That compost will get kind of tired, and you can dig them out later and mix some fresh compost in there and just kind of replant them back into the same space. That will probably be helpful when you see them less vigorous in their second or third year. Okay. Somebody got a bare root lindera, wanted to know whether they would put it directly in the ground. Almost every bare root thing I've ever purchased, I put it through a pot. Put it through a container first. That's me being overly cautious. That lindera is probably not one that you need to be cautious with. It can probably go directly in the ground and not have to worry about it. But for the most part, I have been overly cautious my whole career in this business, potting bare root things, getting a little bit of new root growth to initiate, and then putting them in the ground. That's just the way that's the way I approach it. But again, lindera's tough. You may be able to just go right into the ground. Maybe not in this cold weather, but certainly as it warms up in the spring. Last question for this week. Somebody's got a tangerine beauty crossvine or bignonia. Bignonia is actually native to the southeast, but boy, You know, everybody's like, we got to have natives, we got to have natives. You put that native in your landscape and you'll be fighting it for a while. They can be super, super aggressive if they're happy. Not one that I would have in my landscape, but they are quite beautiful and super showy. Pollinators absolutely love them. Big, giant trumpet-shaped flowers on them. This person has one. It only bloomed briefly last spring and then just took over as an absolute weed. Wanted suggestions for it. For me personally, that is too aggressive of a plant. You know, Carolina jessamine and bignonia, 2 native vines that I probably just don't want in my landscape because I just know the amount of maintenance that I'm going to have to do to them. Why it didn't bloom as much as you thought it should have, I don't know if it's a newer planted plant, because newer planted plants aren't going to perform at their absolute peak, you know, that first year. If it's been in the ground for a long time and it's underperforming flowering, I don't know if it's not getting enough sun, fertilizer, mulch. Is it being competed with other things? I have no idea why it's underperforming in that regard. But in terms of your comment about it being a bully in the garden, yeah, it's an absolute bully, and probably, again, you know, not a plant for me, but a plant I always admire when I see it in someone else's yard. I have quite a few of those plants. Oh, wow, that thing, wow, look at that. That's great. Quince is on that list for me. I put a photo of a quince on Instagram today that I saw in someone else's landscape, not mine, because, you know, for me, it's kind of a weedy, you know, beautiful. Not taking anything away from quince. Blooms super early in the year, always a welcome sign that spring is coming, but it suckers like crazy and it never looks that great to me in a landscape. So, you know, again, like it in someone else's yard. So thank you guys very much for following along with the channel. These birds are really loud, aren't they? And ask questions down below. Like I say, it may be a week or two before I get another one of these up, and that one will include a giveaway. So thanks again for watching. Oh, I'm way down low. Is that weird? Well, maybe it's weird. I don't know. We'll go down just a bit. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't weird. Maybe it was weird. I don't know. Okay.